The voice in your ears and the face on your screen is Perfect Purpose, and this is Pro Football Sweden, presented by Rare Athletics. This is our inaugural season of talking football in Sweden, so feel free to comment and send messages and let us know how we're doing. And now we're going to get into it. I am joined here today by my co-host Alpha Jallo and Antoine Allen. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on?
What is up, Purvis? Good to see you, brother.
Hey, it's good to be seen. We want to give a thank you to all our partners, American football in Finland, pro football in Finland, and this PFS podcast will be everywhere that you can get your podcast, as well as on our YouTube channel. And if you want to go follow us, make sure you subscribe to Pro Football Sweden. All right, guys, it's first and 10. Let's get started. This is a portion of our show where we just speak about what's on our mind, what's going on in our lives, and let you guys get to know a little bit about us. Alpha, you're up, man. What's going on with you?
What's up? So, what's going on with me? You guys know that I'm in Spain right now playing football, and I'm having a blast playing football in Spain right now. We are 5-0. Something interesting is that we get sponsored by Domino's, and for the past 3 weeks, I've got free pizza from Domino's from being the MVP. And this past week, it was a rainy game, didn't perform as well. And I'm not getting pizza this week, and I'm kind of disappointed. But other than that, I'm excited after the season go play football in Finland. And I'm excited to talk about football in Sweden because Sweden was my first love, the first country to give me a contract to play football in Europe. So this is going to be.
Before we move on, I want to ask you about that Domino's pizza, man. Like, does it taste like back in the States or is it, Spanish? Like,
Now it tastes. I would say it tastes very similar to how it tastes in the States. But I honestly, I'm tired of it. Hey, Domino's, don't.
okay.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I don't want
I
to get
mean,
canceled by Domino's.
that's what happens when you constantly the best player, I guess. You get tired of, constantly receiving the gifts that come with that. I wouldn't know nothing about that. I ain't never been the best player like that. But moving on, Antoine, what's going on with you, man? What you got going?
Just in the middle of off season right now, getting ready for this upcoming season here in Sweden. Playing back in Karlskoga this year for the Wolves. We'll be competing in Division One. But yeah, man, I'm just excited to be a part of this team. Excited to be a part of this podcast and talk about football in Sweden. I've been talking about football in Sweden for about 3 seasons now. So yeah, just happy to join this platform and be able to share my thoughts and opinions with you guys.
All right, man. It's good to have both of you here. What is going on with me? First of all, I feel like my video isn't as good as it was yesterday. So that's a little upsetting. Second of all, not much is going on with me. It's March now when we're recording this, and I'm trying to get through this last like month of cold in Finland. Uh, I'm jealous of Alpha out there in Spain. That weather is much better. I'm also jealous of Antoine being in Sweden because that weather is much better. I was just in Sweden a couple weeks ago, and it damn near summertime out there to me. It was like +7 or +8 or something like that. Here it is -5 today. But as you see, I'm wearing t-shirts, staying inside where I keep it +22 at all times. Other than that, I don't really have much going on. Just getting back on these podcasts. Be on the lookout for both the PFS and the AFF podcast will be coming out if anybody follows Finland. Also, I've started writing for First Down Magazine. If anybody's watching that, we're putting out a couple articles about some things, and I'll be putting some Sweden and Finnish articles out there once the season starts. That's about it for me. So I guess we can move on. Let's get into our 2024 Super Serien predictions presented by our sponsors, Rare Athletics. Made 4 players, 5 players. You know what it is. Rare.se. Go to their web shop, get your drip right, do what you got to do. You want to look good, play good. Rare Athletics is where you want to go. So make sure you go over to their website and tell them that, the PFS pod sent you to get that drip, and we'll move on from there. Let's get into the predictions, man. I think before we get into the predictions, we got to talk about some stuff. There's some things we said even before we started recording about this season. Sweden going up to 8 teams. what are you guys' thoughts on this, the whole change of, from 4 teams to 8 teams, and how you think it's going to affect the season this year?
I think it was a big jump, but I think it was necessary. And the reason why I think it's necessary because it's going to show the future of what football in Scandinavia is like. A lot of leagues right now are being affected by the ELF effect, where countries in the southern divisions or southern parts of Europe have an ELF teams and it's taking most of the best local players and it's doing the same season as the Scandinavian and Nordic countries. And 8 teams is something that I think is the bare minimum, for a league. And it's something that I discussed with the former president of football in Sweden to bump it up to about 20 to 25 teams and make a Scandinavian league where it'd be like a
25
ELF,
teams?
20 to 25 teams. You have to grab the teams from Denmark, of course, grab the teams from Norway, and take some of the lower division teams from Sweden and bump them up. But 8 teams, I think, is good. I do think that, as we're going to discuss later, some of the teams that recently moved up might get banged up a few weeks, but maybe a few of them could sneak in and upset some teams. So I think it's good for them that this football league in Sweden is doing something more unique and more different that we've seen before in Sweden.
What
Yeah.
about you, Antoine?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what Alpha was just saying, I think it's a smart move. I mean, I've been saying it on any podcast that I've been on for a couple of years now that the Super Series needs to become more competitive by adding more teams. So they bumped it up to 8 and adding a team from Norway. I think was a smart move as well. To me, like to kind of piggyback off of what Alpha was saying, I think that it should be a larger league. It should start a little bit earlier. It should finish a little bit later, make it more competitive, have divisions, and have people competing, different teams competing closer to home. So the travel is not you're not traveling from the middle of Sweden all the way down to the bottom of Sweden. That's like an 8-hour road trip. So take out all the long road trips, make it more suitable for teams to be able to compete in their divisions, and then the playoffs can be more structured and more. It would just look better. I think this is the first step in moving towards that goal. I think opening it to 8 teams was a smart move. I'm excited to talk about it and see it and be able to watch some of the games this year.
And if I can just add one more point, as a
Yeah.
player right now, it's more fun to play against more teams. It's
Facts.
boring when you're playing against the same teams over and over again. Even though last year was competitive, amongst the 3 or 4, it was a
What?
competitive amongst them, but it's not fun to play against,
Yeah,
the same teams back to back.
yeah. It just becomes repetitive. You're seeing the same players, you're playing the same games. You know who's going to do what. It's a familiarity in the games and in the approach to the games. Like the competition. So I think going into this season, adding 4 new teams, it's the unknown. You don't know what you're really going to get. You don't know how teams are really looking. So it'll be interesting to see for sure.
I guess I'll throw in my 2 cents. You guys are more like invested in Sweden, having played there and kind of been in that thing. I've always been on the outside looking in. I visit Sweden, I don't live in Sweden. I don't play in Sweden. I've been there a few times. For me, them going to 8 teams is them giving me an opportunity more than anything. I've been saying for the past couple of years, people ask me about the Sweden League all the time. They're like, there's only 4 teams. It must not be good down there. And I'm telling them the last couple of years, them 4 teams, you put them in any other league, they're right up at the top. Like those aren't 4 bad teams, but it still doesn't change the fact that there's only 4 teams.
Mm.
So now them having the 8 teams, even I mean, we'll get into the predictions, but even if the 4 teams who were there before are the better of the 4 teams, it gives the league a little bit more legitimacy. And I think that's something outside of Sweden that people want to see. I think also with them doing the 8 teams, them doing the Sweet Three play, and making sure all the games are recorded this year. That's something
Mm.
that's going to be helpful for getting eyes on the league. Again, I've told people like I keep up with Sweden. I know what's going on out there, but you have to take my word for it because there's no film. I mean, there's not like a consistent film for most of the teams, and then there's not a lot of teams playing. But now you're going to be able to show something every week. You're going to be able to say, this is how we play football in Sweden. and people can tune in, watch it. Then we'll be here on the podcast letting you know how it really went down, and that'll be helpful as well for some of the people who maybe don't want to watch the games, all the 3 hour games. But I do think that them having 8 teams this season is a big move for the league, and it's going to give them more exposure on the international stage. And kind of like what Alpha was talking about with doing, like, bringing in those other teams from other countries and doing like a Nordic thing. That's cool. But again, you got to start somewhere. And I feel like this will be a good first step. And maybe
Mhm.
eventually they do bring in those other teams. There's been word that, they're trying to get a Nordic league together. Kind of like how they did the NEFL back in, what was it, 2017? Was it 17 or 18, Alpha? You played in it.
Which one? Oh, when we
The
played against like Helsinki and
Helsinki, yeah, the NEFL.
yeah.
That's what it was called. I think doing something like that. I mean, I would call it the NEFL too, just so he can, have that FL thing going. But other than that, I do think the 8 teams is really good for the league, and it's gonna shake some things up. So let's get into the predictions now. And even before we do the predictions, all right, this is as a podcast, as a PFS podcast. This is our first year going all in on Sweden football. So these picks are based on almost nothing. So if you're listening or watching, don't add us about our picks and, oh, did it. Hey, we're putting this out here so we can get this league started. Okay. So before anybody tries to come at me about my picks, just know after week 2, my pick's probably going to change 100%. But right now, we're making it before the season, before a lot of the rosters are even put out, before we have even more information. We're making picks to let you guys know that we understand that this is where things could go. So let's get into it. Oh, before we get into it, I said I wanted to pull up the schedule. I want to talk a little bit about the schedule of this season. Um, Guys, we talked about it before the show, but now want to reiterate it. Everybody's not playing at home and away. Everybody's playing, what is it, 7 games, and then 6 teams make playoffs. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was going to be, I thought by them adding 4 more teams, I thought the season would be a little bit longer. I thought every team would play each other twice, but that would be obviously that they constructed it in a way where it makes sense for every team to play each other once, and then 6 make the playoffs. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording. 6 teams making the playoffs, to me, in my opinion, it takes away some of the competitiveness of the league. Like, you're only fighting to stay out of the bottom 2. So yeah, it's a cat fight at the bottom, but once you're at the top, you know what I mean. Like, you're just sitting there, you're just waiting for the playoffs. So you kind of coast your way into the playoffs. Maybe rest guys a little bit more. Maybe try some things that you wanted to work on. But yeah, it just becomes like, I don't know, like load management in the NBA kind of for your for some of your better players to preserve them for important games, I guess.
Well, I would say off of what you just stated, just staying out of the last 2. I think it's the ways that you look at it. Some teams actually will look at it from that perspective where they're just trying to stay out of the bottom 2. But the other teams who know they have a legitimate chance to compete, they want to stay in the top seed. For example, if I'm Stockholm, in which we already know that Stockholm is going to be a top team,
Yeah.
I want to have the number 1 seed. And if you're another team after that, I'm not going to list out right now because we're going to not spoil the show. I want to be the number 2 seed if possible. So I'm going to be trying to compete against the team that's number 3 or number 4 to make sure that their record isn't as close as mine or the point system or whatever. But so I'm okay with this 16 thing as well, because the next point that I just want to make is that there's new teams that come into the league right now. Some of them not going to have a full roster of imports like how some other teams may have. So they may have this excuse that some of these teams like to make in Scandinavia that, oh, we didn't do so well this year, we got to stay out. But now when they have the opportunity to get into the playoffs, they say, look, this is our first year back in the Super Series this year. We were number 5, we were number 6, we got into the playoffs. And we had a chance to compete against the best teams, But what could hurt them is just the travel distance if they are a poor team and come into not poor team when it comes to economy, but poor play of a team. They will have to travel pretty far depending on which team they have to play against to get to the playoff, and that might be their excuse. And I'm heading towards the teams from the South.
I'm gonna tell you. 6 teams out of 8 making the playoffs, it's all malarkey. Yeah, I said it. Malarkey. That's what that is. I understand that, you want to have, everybody have a chance to make the playoffs. And I think having 6 teams, it means everybody's going to be invested. But I also think that it kind of preludes that you expect there to be 2 top teams that kind of halfway through the season, you know who they are. And that right there lets me know that maybe 8 teams wasn't what you should have put in there. Because I think that fighting for the top 4 is going to make the entire league competitive. Fighting for the top 6 is going to make the bottom half of the league competitive. And in my opinion, I don't really want to watch the bottom half of the league. I want to watch the entire league be competitive. Again, I'm going to keep making references to Finland because that's where it's at. But in Finland, there's 7 teams and only 4 make playoffs. Even with only 4 making playoffs, sometimes the the lower teams are good enough that going going 6-6 will get you into the playoffs because the middle of the pack teams can compete with the top teams. But also, you'll have teams that'll go, 6-6 and not make playoffs because if you ain't top 4, you're not top 4. And I think like having that line right there is really good. And for this 6 out of 8, it's just malarkey because you're basically you got 6 games, right? No, 7 games. You got 7 games, and you're saying you got to win 3. You just got to win 3 games in the playoffs.
I think you actually only have 6 games because if you're no, actually, yeah, you
No,
have
there's 8
7. Yeah,
teams.
yeah,
Yeah, there's
7.
eight
Yeah, yeah.
teams.
My bad.
So you got to win. So you got to win 3 games. That's the number. 3 games to get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like that can't be the standard. And again, I'm not trying to bash the league or anything. I know it's the first year. They're trying to figure out stuff. They give everybody opportunity. That's cool. But my personal opinion is malarkey. It is malarkey.
You got to start
So
somewhere. You said it. You got to
yeah,
start
yeah,
somewhere.
again, I'm not knocking them from a business and league standpoint, but from a perfect purpose standpoint, malarkey. That's what it'll be. But that's just how it is. I gotta let you know how I feel.
I think Alpha and I both put AIK.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe. All
So
right, cool, for sure.
okay. So let me just throw out a couple of reasons why I have Christianstein coming in last. Basically, they didn't win nothing last year, so they shouldn't be in Division 1, in my opinion. They were average at best, but they might be able to make a jump and compete this year. But from my personal opinion and from what I've seen from them, I'm not convinced that they're really ready to be in the top league. So that's why I have them in last place. Now, you guys, you went with AIK. Alpha, what is your reasoning behind having them in last?
I'll keep my reason simple. Icor, they believe they should have been in the Super Series the season before going into this one based off winning it outright.
Hmm.
And they haven't proven that right now. So for me, you got to prove to me that you shouldn't be in this position. As you said earlier, we don't ultimately know what things are going to be like. Our picks can just change it in 2 weeks. We ultimately know how teams are doing by the week 3 or 4. But right now, I have to put Aiko in this position because they haven't proven that they deserve to be anything higher.
What about you, Antoine?
I'm gonna say facts to Alpha. So yeah, that AIK last year they finished at the bottom of Division 1. So that means they got beat by the Predators, they got beat by the Limhams, they got beat by the Karlskoga Wolves. They did a whole lot of losing last year. When you finish at the bottom of a lower division, then you make the jump. I get it. You're in a position where you thought you should have been a couple years ago, but to further prove your point and to continue on a path of winning and created a tradition of winning, if you felt like you got slighted by not being brought up to the Super Series, then you go back and you win Division 1 again, not finish at the bottom of the league. So that's why I have them at last. So we'll see. We'll see what they do the first couple of games of the season. But right now, yeah, I have them sitting dead last.
It all makes sense to me. So moving on to 7th place, which would be almost last. I have AIK. Have them coming in almost last. Alpha, who do you have?
I have the Predators.
And
Crew Conquer.
Antoine, who do you got?
I put Oslo.
Oslo. Okay. So I'll lead it off with AIK because basically saying what you guys already said, they didn't look good last year. Um, Apparently they came at the bottom of the league last year, but I do believe that it's it's been proven in the Swedish leagues that sometimes teams don't play to their level on a consistent basis. And I use Tyresö Royal Crowns as an example over the last like 3 years, and like Uppsala, and like there's teams that they're good, they just don't play good, or they have a bad year and they do something like that. And I think that's what AIK did. I think that they wanted to play last year, but they didn't want to play. It's one of those situations where they're playing in Division One. They felt like they should have been in the Super Serien, and when things went bad, they're like, "Oh well," and they just let it go bad. I don't have the facts to it, but I'm pretty sure they probably had players not showing up to certain games. Probably had people not going to practices and stuff because they weren't all into it. I think going into this season, they're gonna have that same confidence that hey, we can compete in Super Series, but now they have to prove it. There's no we can just lackadaisical through this and then go up. Like we're in the top league now. I think they're gonna try to have to prove it. I think they'll steal some wins, but I don't think they'll steal enough to actually, make that playoff of top six teams. As tough as that will be.
Yeah.
Um, what about you, Alpha? What are your thoughts about why you have the Predators down here at seven?
I mean, I put the Predators at 7 because I know that there's talent in the South. Limham Griffins, the Predators, other teams from the South, like you said, they all have good talent down there. But I don't believe that making a jump from Division One and moving up to the highest level is always going to be easy as they think. We know that they are competitive, but you and I both know from we've seen in Finland, we've seen this in Sweden. I played with a team called Göteborg Marbles in 2018, and we had talent on our teams. There's no doubt. Skill players, we had talent. O line, we had a few guys who were really good, but just making that jump to the Super Series was hard. And we lost to a team that was at the bottom, and we thought we should have won that game. And we lost that game. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah. We lost that game. And the time that we beat them by 1 point. And we thought this was a team that we were supposed to dominate. So I can imagine they have that same mentality. Okay, we're moving up. We just need to beat these couple teams. It's not going to be as easy as you think. And that's where I think that some of these teams like Limham, Griffins, and the Predators are going to be thinking. And you got to prove yourself. You're the new guys in here.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Antoine? You said you went with Oslo. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty low for
And
Oslo.
I think that's a little disrespectful for Oslo, but go ahead and speak.
Yeah. Explain
Listen,
yourself, man.
listen. Don't crucify me now. Just listen to what I have to say. So, Oslo's been playing. Oslo's been playing in the Scandinavian Cup for the past 2 seasons. They haven't beat a Swedish team. Their first 3 games of this upcoming season is the Tyresö Royal Crowns, Örebro Black Knights, and the Costa Crusaders. They have a tough opening 3 weeks to the season. I think they have the hardest opening for any of the new teams entering the Super Series this year. So I think the first couple of weeks of the season will answer all the questions I have. They're unknown to me. Only thing I know is by what I off of what happened last year in the Scandinavian Cup in the year prior. Other than that, I don't have any knowledge of them or any of their players or anything like that. So I placed them there because it's just the unknown to me. I know that they can compete probably against the other new teams that enter into the Super Series. But yeah, this their first 3 opening games are the toughest out of any of the new teams. So it's going to answer a lot of questions. So they could steal a win, they could steal a couple of wins. They could be 2-1, or they could start off the season 0-3, and it's just like now what?
Well, I'm gonna hit you with a Lee Corso. Not so fast. Not so fast. I can't sit here and let you throw, Oslo Vikings under the bus like that because that's one of my teams. I followed them over the last 7 or 8 years as well. Um, True to your point, they have not beaten a Swedish team, but also they have not played any low level Swedish teams. They've lost to Karlstad, Tyresö, Stockholm, and Örebro. They've lost to the top teams,
Exactly, and
and
that's what they're
uh,
opening the season
again,
against.
a loss is a loss. And I'm not saying that they won't lose if they play them again, but look at some of those losses.
Right. The same.
They were in those games. It wasn't like a team put up 50 on them and they left. Nah, they were in those games. I think one time they played Orebro and it was like a blowout, but other than that, they were in those games. They almost beat Stockholm once for sure. And I think there was another team. I want to say Tiraso. They almost got them. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But when they played those games, they competed. And I do think that if you're talking about also Vikings, you have to remember that they're playing in Norway, so they haven't played. Even when they play these Swedish games, it's kind of like outliers. Now, if
Mm,
you put them in a situation now where they're going to have 3 weeks of playing, similar type of football,
mm.
they're going to win one of them games. I'm not going to tell you which one, but they're going to win one of those games for
I just
sure.
yeah, I just scrolled further down the schedule. Yeah, they opened up their season. Their first 4 games are against all of the current uh or all of the old Super Series teams. So they open it up
Yeah,
against all the top of the table. So it's going to be an
yeah,
interesting 4 weeks. And I think the first couple of weeks they'll answer a lot of questions for me about Oslo.
yeah,
Look, I didn't put them last. I
yeah,
didn't.
yeah. I understand. I ain't mad at you.
But you put them out of not making even the playoffs.
Hey, it's just the unknown.
Before we move on, I just
Yeah,
gotta say is like
go
it
ahead.
is important that they do win at least 2 of those opening games because if they don't, it kind of sets the tone for some of them.
I I don't think they're gonna win two. I think they might win one,
So you
but
think
I
they
don't.
you
I don't.
start the season 1-3?
I think they can start at 1-3, and you only got to win 3 games to make playoffs, right?
That's yeah,
Like, I mean, just think about it. If you said it, that's a gauntlet. That's tough for your first 4 weeks.
yeah,
If they win one of those games, they just got to beat two out of the other four or other three.
yeah.
You got to
True.
have three left. They got to win two out of three. And in my opinion, if they play those first 4 games and physically have the players on their roster left, they'll beat two of the next three teams. Like it
Oh,
won't be they'll be ready. Like I think it's kind of like if you want to like learn how to swim, you just throw the kid in the deep end, and
Yeah.
yeah.
we're gonna find out is also gonna sink or swim. I
You know,
believe they'll swim, but they might sink.
yeah, I know we get a little off topic, but I think this is a little Swedish football conspiracy right here. They put the only team that's that's not from Sweden, and they lined them up against the best team just to make it look like, yeah, you guys gonna start off 0-4 potentially. You
Yeah.
know, it's like that's wild.
They got two home games in there, so yeah, throw 'em a
And
little.
guess who?
Stockholm, and they open up their opener against TSO is a home game as well.
I mean, yeah, of course they want to bring the Stockholm teams to Norway so they can have a good time over there. The
Well,
Swedish league wanted
that's
that.
a easier travel. That's easier travel too, because you can just take a flight, right? I
Yeah, right
think.
to Oslo. I did that,
Yeah,
and
you can go
boom.
straight from Stockholm to Oslo. And it's not expensive either, like $100, so it's pretty cool. I believe in what you said, Alpha, about the conspiracy. And this might sound weird to say, but I think it's kind of like get joining a gang. They want to join the Swedish gang, they got to get jumped in.
Damn.
And that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna give all four of them straight up. Like, you want to be in this league, you're gonna have to,
Yeah,
earn your
but,
stripes, and
but
that's what also gonna have to do.
what do you guys think? What do you guys think a potential 0-4 start to the season would do to their confidence for the rest of the season?
I think if they start off 0-4, I don't think they're gonna lose motivation. Do believe in Oslo coaching.
Yeah,
But again, like as you said, hey, I just gotta win a few games. Purpose said I just gotta win 3 games to get in. And as you said in the beginning, that you just gotta not be the last 2 teams.
yeah.
So they can say, look, hey guys, you guys really want to make playoffs? You can be 0-5. You really want to make playoffs? You need to win these last 3 games.
But that's yeah. After you got beat on, if this is all hypothetical. After you got beat on, you start off 0-4, then you got to win out. And any
But it
close,
depends on how you got beat. It depends on how you got beat. Like if they're getting shellacked 30-7 and
yeah,
45-12, yeah, the confidence is shaking. But if you're losing by a touchdown, losing by a field goal, losing because one play you feel messed up what was happening, damn it, I don't care. But if one thing happens, you feel like you were in those games,
mm,
you're still gonna have confidence that you can compete. And
yeah,
if you make it through that, even if you don't win those games, you were up there, that's gonna make you feel like, well, everyone else I should be able to beat.
Yeah,
So again, I think it's a good spot for them because they're really gonna find out who they are. Like you said, we're gonna find out who the also Vikings are very soon in the
yep,
season. Moving on to what is it, number six?
yeah.
Yeah, number six. I have Limham Griffins. Alpha, you have
Limham Griffins, baby.
all right, and Antoine, you have
I put the Predators. Cohansta Predators.
okay. All right, that makes sense. Well, I'm gonna explain my Griffins. They're the only team from Division One that deserves to be in the Super Series. They won Division One last year. That's why they should be in the Super Series. I got them in sixth place, saying that they're I guess they're going to make playoffs because six teams make playoffs. But I think that they have a lot of young talent. I think the team is good. They proved it last year that they can win games. But I do think that in the Super Saiyan, their coaching is going to be what really sets them apart. How they go about playing these teams that I think are going to have more veteran and savvy players when it comes to football. But I think the Griffins have the talent, the what is it? The hoopska. Is that a word? Hoopska? I don't know. They, they got that thing. They got that thing, but that thing ain't gonna be enough in the Super Series. That's what I mean. Whatever they got, they're gonna have to translate that into actual, schematics, X's and O's, doing the right thing in the right situations, and stealing a couple of games against those top teams. I believe that they can steal a couple games against the top teams. And I know I put them in six, but I wouldn't be surprised if they, came in fifth or fourth. It wouldn't surprise me. But again, like I said, it comes down to their coaching and them being able to put their players in the right situation. I don't have much reference on their coaching staff, so I can't say that they were going to be able to do that. But I am going to find out this season if they're capable of it. What about you, Alpha? What are your thoughts on them?
I put them at six simply similar to the reasons why you put them at six. But I would just say that I think they're going to have the pride for being the Swedish team that's new to the Super Series league to have that ego of, hey, we're the best team that's new from Sweden that's in the league, and we need to show them this. And of course, their derby or their rivals down in the south, Kukonstad Predators, they want to prove to them that they're better than them. If there's to be a case where both of them fall out of the league, hey, we did better than you guys while we were in the Super Series in 2024. And that's my reason why I put them at six.
I like the idea of the derby with the Predators and stuff. I think I think that's also a good reason that they went to eight teams because you can still keep those rivalries intact because they're playing the same league and whatever. But Antoine, you had who did you have?
Cohansta Predators.
Ah, okay, you had the Predators. What's your reasoning
Mhm.
for that?
Well, it's really simple. It's simple and straightforward. I believe that they can beat two teams, and that's Oslo and AIK. I do think that they'll be competitive against Limham. Do I think that they're better than Limham? No. But they finished second to them in division play last year, and they lost to them in the Division One championship game. I think they have a lot to prove. They are one of the two teams that's coming up from the South, and from all the teams in the South, they have extreme high pride in playing in the South and their talent down there. So I think putting them at six was just a conservative decision.
If I can add something, the teams from the South, they already believe as well that they should already be in the Super Series. They just didn't never wanted to make the travel. So they do have a little bit of ego thinking that they can do this. But here's the problem though with the teams from the South is that when it comes to import play, I don't think that they have the budget to do this for numerous imports, but also they don't want to have import players. They think that they can just go off of their Swedish talent alone and just gamble with this, which I don't think is a smart move. So this is why I'm not putting these lower division teams that's moving up to the Super Series higher than six.
That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, they don't know what it takes to win in the Super Series, right? They haven't done it. They haven't been there. So they're going to try to do it with that Division One mindset.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see opening week. The Predators open up against Costa, so we'll see.
I mean, they should also go off of history. I mean, the last team that was in the Super Series that was in Division One was Limhan Griffins. Because I remember in 2017, the year I first played in Sweden, Limhan was there. Then they've been down ever since. And then I always heard of the rumors of how much talent that Kunkarstad Predators had. They said that all the players that you see on your team right here in Karlstad, all of them came from the Predators, you know what I mean? And they was like, yeah, the Predators are super good and things like this. I'm like, okay, that must mean they got some talent down there in the South. Then when I went down to not Göteborg, Helsingborg Jaguars, and I got to discover some of the talented players that were down there because they would come up and train with Greg Gibson. And I was like, okay, they got some talent down here. But talent, always going ain't the answer to winning games in football.
I'm just gonna say this, man. Look, you be seeing these players and you see them like in their own element, and you're like, oh man, that's pretty good. And then you put on the stage, and
Mm-hmm.
when you put on the stage, you find out what they really made of. No disrespect to the Predators, but when y'all get on this stage, you got to play against Stockholm Mean Machines, Karlstad Crusaders, Brew, Curacao, where these guys, most of these teams, they've been doing this. They know how to do this. They know all the ins and outs. That football savvy that I talked about earlier, that really separates a lot of these teams. And now that you're going to have more of these teams playing, you're going to find out. Like, just being good isn't what it takes to win. You
Mm,
just being good doesn't mean you're going to win. Um, think about it in this aspect. I'm damn near 40 years old, but there's some things I know about football that will allow me to beat someone who's 10 years, you know, younger than me. Just because I know how to do certain things, I can
mm,
beat somebody in a one-on-one situation. And that type of stuff is what comes into effect when they start playing on this top level is you being good isn't good enough.
yeah.
You got to do a little bit more, a little bit extra, and you got to figure out a way to get wins. And I think that's something that is very hard to do in year one. And I think a lot of these teams that are coming up, they're going to find out. And then to protect myself, if some of these younger teams come up and just run amok through this Super Serien, that means that the teams that were already in the Super Serien, y'all wasn't nothing to begin with. I ain't want to curse, but y'all ain't ish. 'Cause that's all that could mean. I don't know about you, but I know if I've been doing my thing and then some young buck comes up and then just wipes the floor with me, I must not have been doing my thing. Yeah, we're definitely gonna see. I think it's exciting to figure that out. Let's move on to the next spot. What are we doing? Fifth place now.
That's
Uh,
correct.
yeah, correct.
We have different picks here. So I
Okay.
have Oslo Vikings. Alpha, you have,
Karlstad Crusaders.
and Antoine, you have.
Man,
Okay, yeah. I mean, I feel like this is a spot where it could get shaky because I feel like those are all good picks. Now, I've already told y'all about the Oslo Vikings, okay? Now, I don't have to keep explaining it, but I will go on to say that this is a team that has played internationally pretty much every year for the last 7 or 8 years. They haven't always been successful. Like we've said, last 2 years they played against Swedish teams. They haven't beaten the Swedish team, but they've competed. I think the reason for them coming to the league is that they don't like just competing; they want to win.
mm,
And they know that to actually beat some of these teams, they have to get in there and play them on a regular basis. I do believe that those same four teams they lost to probably end up beating them again, but I don't believe that anyone else can. No, again, no disrespect to those D1 teams. I think that just because Oslo lost to some of the top teams doesn't
mm,
mean that they're going to lose to a team because they're from Sweden. Like, let's get the nationality out of it. This is a top tier team, and it's one of the best in Europe every year. And just because they're losing to some of the other best in Europe doesn't mean that they just can't beat Swedish teams. And I do think that we're going to find out very early in those first four games if they really can compete. And I expect them full heartedly to win at least one of those games. I don't think they have to win two, but I think if they win one and play competitive, they've proven their point, and that's why I have them at five. Um, I would have them kind of like outside the playoff picture, but right on the cusp. But since 16 being in, I guess they'd be in the playoff picture. So yeah, that's why I have them at 5. Alpha, what about your pick? What's your reasoning behind that?
Yeah, I took Carl Crusaders and Carlstadt Falot me. Falot. Because that's my first love right there. But I got to keep it real. You know, we on the podcast and I can't put my feelings involved in this. But historically speaking, Carlstadt has always been a strong team. And even though they didn't finish super great last year, I
last,
believe they were last season,
last.
but they still won the Scandinavian Cup.
Yeah, we won the Scandinavian. But
They
like,
won the Scandinavian Cup. You know what I mean? They finished last, but they won a Scandinavian Cup.
Can I jump in? Can I jump in, please?
I
Go
That
ahead.
played.
is just a that's a perfect example of teams not playing their best all the time in Sweden. They were able to win the Scandinavian Cup because there probably were games where they weren't able to put their best foot forward in the Super Serien because of the scheduling. There's games where, sometimes you just don't play or you have injuries, blase, blase. That happens in the Swedish league, especially with those games being so spread out last year and in the past. And I think that that's something that we definitely got to stay, aware of going into this season is that sometimes the teams just don't bring their A game, and that's a part of the game, and that's what's gonna make some of these teams go up and down. And that's what Carlstad did last year. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Alpha. I just want to throw that out there so people know.
Yeah, go ahead. Antoine, if you want to cut in before I finish my points, let me
Yeah,
know.
no, I agree. Like I played in Costa last year, and a lot of games that we hit the field with, it was just a lot of one. It was injuries, and then it was just some of the stuff that we were trying just wasn't working. And then we had a mid-season coaching switch. Costa last year was just working through a lot of stuff. And then when we played in the Scandinavian Cup, we just had favorable matchups. We played
Mm,
against the what is it, the 1814s or I think
yeah, 18-14,
I
Eisbo.
draw.
Yeah,
yeah, Eidsvoll. Yeah, we
yeah.
played against them twice, and then we played against Örebro, and then we matched up well against Örebro all the way up until the last game in the Super Series last year. So it was just favorable matchups, and uh, it was just teams that we were playing last year that we felt confident that we could beat, and you played that way. In our mentality and the mindset was right entering those games beforehand. So yeah, but and then we did play one good game against Stockholm. Finished. I think they beat us 6-9. That was the first time we matched up, and that I think that game was supposed to be like our momentum game. Like, listen, okay, we were in it until the last 30 seconds when they kicked the field goal. So we could have put ourselves in a position to win that game and beat the top team in the Super Series, and that was supposed to be like our propeller to launch us forward, but it just didn't happen.
See, my point exactly. So the reason why I put Karlstad at number 5, and I do think they can potentially even be 4 to even 3. Historically speaking, Karlstad is a tough team. You'll be delusional if you think that you can just walk into Karlstad, go into Karlstad and beat them, or Karlstad travel to your home and it's going to be an easy matchup. I think the O line is going to be better this year, and I believe that if they game plan smoothly with their offense, they should be able to pound the ball and throw in a couple play action plays. And they did sign, well, we're not going to talk about the signings right now, but they did sign one of our top receivers from Finland who had a good season last year, who I think they will be trying to get the ball into his hands. So they will have some passing threats as well. But O-line speaking, like in the trenches, Karlstad has always been tough. And I think they're going to do a good job this season recruiting players back to Karlstad and getting a few international players that's probably going to be EU guys that will get the job done for them.
I feel like you explained it well enough. Yeah, you almost make me think that they're gonna come in that position. You almost got me, Alpha. But Antoine, you have who do you have? Lindholm?
Limham, yeah.
Yeah, you got to explain yourself on that,
Yeah,
man.
I don't listen.
you got too much hope in these young bucks, man.
Yeah, you explain
Well,
yourself.
but if you look at where I rank teams, it makes sense. So you start off with AIK last, and then we move to Oslo because that's just unknown, and then you have
Hmm.
Kuhansta, and now Kuhansta, and now Limham. Limham won Division One last year. They went undefeated. They're not losing to any other new teams. They might have a good competition against Oslo, but we'll see. We'll see when they play. But they're not losing to Kuhansta because they haven't lost to them in 2 years. I don't think. um, and they're not losing to AIK. They're just not. And then you get to upper part of the league. They opened up their season against Stockholm, so it's champion versus they both each won their respective
It's an
division.
L.
But yeah, listen, it's gonna be a while. It's gonna be a while, a hard fought game. But I don't see them winning that game. But I do see them seeing how they match up against the best in the Super Series. But yeah, like I said, I don't see them losing against any of the other new teams that they got brought up. I just don't, and that's why I have them in that position because that would just put them ahead of all of the new teams.
All right, that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense, like you said. So I'm not gonna argue it, but
Everything makes sense right now until we start seeing them
yeah,
play.
until we see somebody play, everything makes sense. You can't really argue that the sense. So what is that? Fifth place. Let's move on to fourth place. Um, I think
We
we all
all,
got OBK.
yep,
All right, that's
Yeah,
good. I mean, we finally agreed on something. For me, I mean, I just think that they're gonna find ways to win games. They're always a good organization. I really like their defense more than anything. I feel like they have one of those defenses that always keeps them in the game. As long as you can stay in the game, there's opportunity, and OBK is going to give their team opportunity. They're going to give the offense opportunity to win games. I don't think there's a lot of teams that can upend them that came from Division One. I think they physically outmatch most of those teams. And then when it comes to the top teams in the league, they could easily be two, three, one. I don't know, but right now I got them in what, fourth? Yeah,
yeah.
I got them in fourth. That's a safe place to put them. What about you guys?
I probably call I said all you call, excuse me, bro. Because you said OBK. I never heard anybody say OBK.
Oh, I always call them OBK. That's what's on the little sheets and stuff all the time.
Ah,
It's always OBK.
okay.
So I
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
for
start
sure,
calling
for
them
sure, for
OBK.
sure. You're right. Anyways, though, bro, Black Knights. As you said, I think they can be four. They can even be three. They can potentially be even number two. I ain't putting them number one though. However, bro, when I looked at their Instagram and I looked at their coaching staff, they had about 8 coaches. And I forget the head coach name right now. Is it Matt?
Sam,
Sam?
yeah,
Sam, Matt, whatever these American names, you know, they're all the same thing to me. I think he's a pretty good coach, and I like what he did with the program. And I think that their culture with coaching is going to do well, and they got some dogs at receiver.
mm,
Um, they
facts.
have a good history of being a competitive team and a tough team, just like Karlstad. And I think that they believe that they have the momentum to be a team to be in the championship every season. I think they just got to get over the hump of beating Tirso or the other team that's just on their back. So I believe that this is going to be a good season for Blue Black Knights, and if they can come back to being the team how they were in 2017, 2018, being a good competitive team, I think that number four would be a slap in the face of them. They'll be a number 2 or 3 team.
What about you, Antoine? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah,
I'm gonna call him OBK. That's what I'm gonna call him.
That's
So
okay. That's
what's
cool.
up?
OBK.
I know you said that you like their defense purpose, but last year their defense, in my opinion, was one of the weaker defenses in the Super Series last year. Hence why I think that they brought back Sam because he's a defensive coach and he made that
Mm.
difference. And they were good defensively in 2021, and they won the gold that year. So they won the national championship that year. So I think bringing him back is a smart move. He can definitely coach up their defense a little bit better and get them playing uh, back at that championship level. So that's why I kind of put them at number 4, just to see. This is just a gauging position for me to see what he does on the coaching end and how they respond to it, and then what that essentially brings to the field. So I think number 4 is very conservative for them. Like Alpha said, they could be number 2. I'm not putting any other team at number 1 besides the team that we all have at number 1. So let's just state that right now. But yeah, I think number 4 is very conservative. We'll just see. They opened up their year against Stockholm. Unfortunate, but you know, we'll see.
I think we all agreed on that, so that's easy. Let's go to third place. Who do we all have in third place? I think I'm going with Karlstad at
So,
third
yeah,
place.
I have Costa as well.
And
All
I'm
right,
going
and
with Oslo Vikings.
okay, so I don't want to go first. Explain the Oslo Vikings to me, Alpha, because that's a stretch for me.
I think that they're going to prove that they can be competitors in the Swedish league. I do think that their first couple games are tough. Matter of fact, their first 4 games are extremely tough. However, they are going to figure it out. I believe in the history of the Oslo Vikings. They always been a competitive team. They competed on the international level, and even though they lost to a lot of Swedish teams over the past couple of years, they didn't get blown out by any of the teams. I mean, I don't even remember when I played in Stockholm that we played against Oslo. I know we played against the Danish team and Helsinki, but Oslo is going to figure it out. They're going to put their players in the best position. They're going to have, hopefully, I'm not going to speak on the economy. I think they're going to have their money saved up in case they need to bring an extra import in to get the job done, to fill in the missing pieces of where they might not be super good at. I think they're going to get that done. And I do believe that they want to prove for Norway's sake that Norway isn't the worst country for American football in Scandinavia. So I got a little bit of faith in you guys, a little bit of faith. So don't prove me wrong. Matter of fact, I have big faith in you guys. I got you guys at number 3 in the Swedish Super Series. So show me what y'all got.
That was interesting. You said that they're going to prove that Norway isn't the worst. I don't think they can prove that.
Yeah.
I I
well,
I feel like Oslo out there represent Oslo. Like I don't know because I never thought about it like that until you said that. Because I always forget that they're like I guess they are
I,
representing
I think he's
Norway.
frozen, but he said that they're going to represent Oslo. I do think a little bit that since they're playing it internationally, if I'm a kid from Norway, I want to play with them because I want to play against more Swedish teams. So I think they're going to attract some talent to their team.
Yeah, they already have a pretty good U19, and I don't know if they have U17, but I know they have a pretty good U19 program as well. So I guess what you says makes sense. Again, everything makes sense because they have no one's playing in games.
Yeah.
But who, if you got them coming third, they got to win 2 out of them 4 for sure. Yeah.
So I'm
But
gonna call upset against Tirso first game.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
I
We'll see.
mean, I mean, we'll see, we'll see. But I think me and Antoine went with the right guys. We went
Also,
Carlstad,
mhm.
and my reasoning for going with Carlstad at 3 is I believe last year was not great, but I don't believe last year is what we're gonna see. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like you said, like you guys went through things last year, still won the Scandinavian Cup based on, matchups. But I think this year again, the matchups, playing in the Super Serien, the matchups matter a lot. And I think that Karlstad is always one of those teams that you got to respect them every week. They're never going to be a team that you just say, oh, that's a win. But also, they're going to get some wins that we're like, damn, if they would have played them at a different time, they would have lost. I feel like that's the type of team that Karlstad is going to be. Is they're going to get some wins where they get them in the right situation, the right matchups, like we were talking about last year. I don't feel that they're going to go lower than 3 because I feel like I have Orebro at 5. I mean at 4. I have them at 4 because I think that when they play Karlstad, that's the game they lose, and
Mm.
that's pretty much the only reason I have them at 3, or I would have had them at 4. And I think that they're going to beat Orebro head to head, and that game is going to be kind of the determining factor of who's 3, who's 4. That's me. What about you, Antoine?
For this league, the way it's structured and all the teams in it, I just don't see many teams beating them besides Tyresö and Stockholm. Those are the only 2 teams that I can say for sure can beat Costa at this point in time. And this is purely based off of last year. Um, so I think they have a big bounce back season this year after missing the playoffs last year. I think Pride and Eagle is on the line. Which direction we're moving in. So I think they're moving in the right direction. Um, yeah, and I just think they have a bounce back season this year, and I think they finish at third, make the playoffs, and then we'll see how they compete come playoff time.
All right, so moving on to second place. Again, we're all in agreement. Here is
Oh,
so
maybe. Yep.
DRC. I mean, I'll lead it off. I think going talking about Tiraso, we saw last year they were able to play it at a little bit higher level. Um, they've always had the talent in the area. From what I've been told and from the players that I know in Sweden, Tiraso has been breeding some of the best players from Sweden for a long time, and they usually were all talk more than actual like proving it. And then last year they kind of proved that they could, be that top team if they got their act together. Which beating Stockholm ain't that easy. But I think seeing them play is one of the things that is going to really explain how their season's going to go. I
Mm.
don't I don't consider them the same as Karlstad. I think Karlstad is kind of up and down. I never know, but I think matchups work for them. Tiraso, if they don't have injuries, I think they could beat anybody in the league, and that's including the Mean Machines. Now, I don't think they can beat the Mean Machines. Like I don't think they actually will, but they could. They have the talent, they have the personnel, they have the infrastructure. They're set up for it. But again, you just got to play the games, and when you play the games, it is what it is. So I believe they'll be number two more than number one. And then this list is just kind of like from the season rankings going into the playoffs. Who knows what happens? Maybe they upset somebody. I don't know. I have a lot of faith in them that they'll have a really good season. But I do think that they're going to be like a dominant team. I don't think they're going to win a lot of close games. I think they're going to blow people out.
Tirso is a very explosive team. I think that, as we all know, the roadblock for them for the past 2 years being in the highest level is Stockholm Mean Machines. That's the
Mm.
only roadblock that they have. However, I put maybe because I think that second place, third place, and maybe fourth place can be anybody. I think it could be any of those teams that we recently spoke about. And Tiraso also has been the team that don't bring in like too many extra imports. Honestly, I think they
Yeah.
just play normally with their Swedish talent because, as you said, they have a lot of good Swedish talent in the Stockholm area. While some other teams in the Stockholm area, they need to grab others. Um, so Tiraso is my number two team right now because they have not proven to get over this roadblock with Stockholm. Even though sometimes on paper they look like they got the better matchup, they put more points up against some other teams that we played against. But then when they just came to playing against Stockholm, and I'm saying we because that was the most recent team I played for in Sweden, they just couldn't get it done against us. Could not.
Something about that team.
Something about him. Yeah.
What about you?
I agree with what you guys both said. For me, Tita, so for the past couple seasons, they've just been building and building and building, and the only team that has stood in their way is Stockholm. So if they can figure out a way to get over the hump, and I don't, yeah, I mean, we'll see, but we'll see, because they do have to still play the game, and this is all just preseason power ranking. But if they can find a way to get over the hump, then yeah, that makes them, finishing one or two. But yeah, and I think it's just going to be a similar season to last year, where they blow out all the other teams. They come to Stockholm, put up a good fight, but ultimately come away with the L. And then I think in playoffs they make the championship game again, and we're looking at a rematch, and we're gonna get the same result.
For sure, you can't even look at numbers. Like if I'm Tiraso and I beat Oslo Vikings, 50-20, but
Yeah,
Stockholm only beat them, 21 to 3. You
yeah,
can't think like, oh, we put more numbers against them. Like they just don't beat
yeah, yeah,
Stockholm.
yeah. I don't think none of that matters. I think when they get on the field, like I said, it's like what you said, purpose. They're gonna blow out teams. It's gonna be entertaining.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a lot of fun. Listen, TSO last year was the one team I played against with Costa, and them beating us felt like embarrassing because they were like dancing in the end zone. They were having a good time. The vibe was right over there. Everybody,
Yeah.
and they playing songs before the game's over. They dancing, and it just makes you feel bad as a player. And then you're just like, bro, I hate them, but they're good.
I
That
don't I don't want to
135
make
energy.
I don't want to make this comparison. No, you know what? I have a good comparison. I think they're gonna be kind of like our Miami Dolphins.
I knew you were going
That
to say
makes
that.
sense.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah,
sense.
I was searching for a team in the NFL to compare them to that like puts up a lot of points, but ultimately not gonna get it done. I didn't want to say Dallas Cowboys because that's just disrespectful. But Miami Dolphins kind of hits on it. Like Miami Dolphins had a great season. They were putting up all these huge numbers. They're doing really well. And then when the playoffs came, they were one and done. And it's like it is what it is. Obviously, they probably have a better chance to actually make the actual championship. But like you said, their biggest impediment is the number one team. Who let's talk about the number one team, Stockholm Mean Machines, baby.
Repeat.
SN, yeah, 3P. I thought it was
Three.
like 7P. I never know.
Yeah.
But Stockholm Mean Machines. There's just things that set them apart to me that I'm gonna throw out here, and I'm gonna let you guys take it. But
Mhm.
one thing that they do that most teams don't do, they really focus on special teams.
Mhm.
Like I've never seen a team like put so much effort on special teams. And if you ever watch the Stockholm Mean Machines, they win field position the entire game. They always win field position. I've never seen a team that almost always starts on damn near their own 40. Like they win field position. And even at times over the years, they had this one guy named Alpha who would come in there and just take punts back to the crib for them. Like that's winning field position. And then they would throw it to Matt Retzloff and he scores all his touchdowns. That's consistent. But that winning field position, they almost never have to go a long way. They almost always have a short field. And then secondly, they have a large coaching staff. Now, it's not as large as some of the ones I've seen in Finland, but they always have a lot of coaches, which means they're able to compartmentalize. And coaches don't have to do more than just their job, which means they're able to have a faster exchange of ideas and changing concepts and actual coaching throughout the games. If you watch them at halftime and the second half of games, if it's closer in the first half, that's it because they're going to blow you out in the second half because they're going to be able to make adjustments because they have so many minds in there helping them coach. And I think outside of those two things, they usually have the best talent. I mean, it is what it is. They get the best players. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a Swedish player, import American, or import European. Like they get the best players, and that just makes it really hard to beat this team. Good coaching, best players, and they win field position. Like beating the Stockholm Mean Machines is something that you got to really do it. And I know we're talking Super Serien, but even looking at their international games, they lose some of those international games, but it's so close,
Yeah.
so close. And again, similar to what we said about the Oslo Vikings, just getting more reps in there internationally, I think they'll get better and better. But in the Super Series, teams are gonna have to come with more than what they have to beat this team, and I don't think anybody really has that much. They don't have that much skin in the game. And we talked about TSO. I don't think they want it bad enough. I think scoring touchdowns and having a good time and having a lot of great games, that's the vibe. That's the vibe. Is you just want to be good at football. But if you want to beat the Mean Machine, you got to do more. You got to do extra. You got to do a little bit. I don't think anybody else does the little things like they do. They do the little things well, and it shows during their games when they win a lot of these close games. That's what really sets them apart. What was it? I think it was last year. I went down there and watched them beat Kuopio Steelers. Was that last year? What was the year before? That was last
Yeah, it was
year.
last year. It was last year. It was last year.
Last year, I seen them go down there and beat the Steelers, and I mean the Steelers almost came back and won. I'm just gonna throw that out there. At the end of the game, Steelers had literally no plans of what to do besides give the ball to Reasonover. At one point, they just gave him the ball in the middle of the field and said, "Do something." Because they didn't have, there was nothing they could actually do against the Mean Machines. But he's that good of a player. He's Retzloff like that. He almost scored at the end of the game, but it was one of those things like even them winning that game against that Finnish team was them kind of trying to get over the hump. And then when they went and played against what was
Unicorn.
it? Schwabers Hall
Mhm.
Unicorns,
That
Mhm.
right?
was that was a good game too.
That
I mean,
was a
they
really good
Yeah,
game.
another
I
good
actually
game.
thought they had that game won. Then the Unicorns, they historically great and
yeah.
high scores for them. Congrats for them winning that game. But they
Yeah,
they won it at the very last second. It was like, oh, we can start.
yeah.
You already knew like it was not any time left on the clock. They're not coming back until getting some Hail Mary drive. It wasn't a thing.
These these are the type of games they're playing internationally. And then they go back to the Super Series, and no
Yeah,
offense to anybody else, but no one else is playing these type of games.
yeah,
So they're ready for these games. They're in the Super Series, they're winning the close games like that. Like nine
Yeah,
times out of 10, if it's close, they're gonna win because they're ready for it. They've practiced it. They've played. They've done this situation. And again, it goes back to that football savvy that I said that some of these Super Series teams have that the Division One teams that came up don't have. They haven't been in those situations. Curaçao's been in most of the situations. They got one situation to get in they haven't been in. That's beating the Mean Machine. I don't think that's gonna happen this year. So, Mean Machine all the way, number one. I should have worn my Mean Machine shirt. I couldn't find it. What about you guys? Sorry, I talked a little bit longer than I thought I was.
Stockholm is a place that I've been, so I can speak so much about Stockholm, but I'm not going to take too much time. But for the listeners and for people who are listening to this from other places about football in Europe, what Stockholm did a good job doing is having a man named Pillback. Pillback is an
Mm,
amazing coach and is an amazing person. And people can talk and say whatever they want about Pillback. Pillback is a good man, you know. And what Pillback has done is that he brought a bit of American culture from the business mindset and bringing it into football. So that's why he focused a lot on special teams, and he the small things matter to Pillback. Special teams matter, and he loved knowing a little bit of small little tools. That some things I don't even think about with special teams. Something small like of if you have your foot out of bounds and you touch the ball on a kickoff return, the ball is out of bounds, so you get the ball, further up the field. And he loves and he embraced knowing those little small details that you should know, you know. And again, with the coaching as well, he always does a good job of making sure that each position group has a coach. And by having that, just like I spoke about Airbrew having, at least 8 coaches, this allow for the players not to be sharing coaches, not to feel neglected from coaching. So, you know, Stockholm has done a good job with the off the field culture and on the field culture when it comes to American football. So this is why they're the number one team. And this is why that these close games that you see them playing and they win those close games. And this is why they blow out some teams. And this is why some teams, just can't even compete with them because they brought a good American football culture that's not European style to Sweden. And it's not like it's super perfect, but they're doing the right things. Even they have a trainer who comes to their practice every Monday to help them out. And they in the weight room. They're doing all the things off the field. So if you want to be the number one team, you're gonna have to do all of these things. And this is why I call that as my number one. And I would like to see an upset if possible, you know what I mean? I'm not on the team, but if I'm playing with them, no, ain't no upsets. But we would like to see the tables turn. But right now, Stockholm is number one. And you got to prove yourself, your team to be Stockholm if you want to be number one.
what about you, Antoine? Throw in your 2 cents.
yeah. Well, everything you guys said. I mean, you guys hit every nail on the head. I mean, they call Stockholm. They just do all the little things right to win football games. It doesn't. They don't worry about the scoreboard. They don't worry about it looking pretty. Only thing they care about is winning the game, and they will do it by any means necessary. The close game that I spoke about that Costa played against them last season, where the score was 6-9. Stockholm kicked and won the game on 3 field goals. They didn't even see the end zone. They kicked 3 field goals. The special teams is on a whole nother level. Their field positioning, everything they do is just on another level. If you look at some of the moves that they made this offseason, they're structuring and preparing their team for international competition to be the best team internationally, not in Sweden. And I think focusing on that, having those higher goals and higher expectations about we want to be one of the best teams in Europe, and we take it seriously, and we want to be considered like the destination to go to when it comes to American football in Europe. I think having that mindset sets them up ultimately for success in Super Series. So that's why they've gone 2 seasons being undefeated because they've structured their team and they prepared their team to be better and be great on an international level and not just on the Swedish football level. Listen, I think they go a three-peat and I think they go a third season going undefeated in the Super Series as well.
I would like that to happen, but for entertainment purposes, somebody should beat them.
It would,
Somebody, just,
it would
let me get an upset. No
It would be.
offense to no, somebody beat them. Who do you think could beat them if there was an upset?
Cheetah Show has the best chance, but I think it would be more entertaining for me to see the Black Knights upset them week one.
Okay, week
It's
one.
gonna be a
Oh,
surprise. I don't know about week one, but it'll be. I mean, actually, that's the time to get it done.
The
That's
only
the
time
yeah,
time
it's
to get it
time.
done.
Yeah,
That's the time to get it done when no one has probably played preseason games. They only playing preseason matchups because now they got Division 1 teams, so you're not playing against the best preseason games. And that's one thing that Stockholm does as well. They get prepared. It's not easy to play your first game in the season and just have not played against any teams at all. Stockholm loves to play against other teams, before. Örebro could get this done, but we would love to see it upset. I think it's going to be a surprise. I don't think it's going to be Tirso to upset them.
Mm.
I can see Karlstad being that team or Oslo.
I was just about to say that. I was going to say Oslo gonna do it. I believe in them guys. Hold on. Oslo plays Tirso, then they play Orbru, then they play Karlstad,
And then they play Stockholm.
then they play Stockholm.
But that's too late in the season. Like Stockholm is going to be too prepared.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
they're playing them after Stockholm plays the Predators.
Stockholm gonna roll all over the Predators. The Predators, come on.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the trap game.
That's a trap game. That's exactly it. That's a trap game right there. You got to play them after they play somebody that they can mock. They
Hey
only
man,
play one half. They play one half against Predators. They come into the next game. They haven't played against anybody tough.
Where's that
Who they
game?
play?
Where's the game? Oslo versus Stockholm. Is it in
then
Stockholm or is it in Oslo?
No,
then
it's in Oslo. That's trap game. That's trap game. They got to travel.
Yeah, because they only thinking about partying after the game.
Hmm.
They're like, let's go over
Hmm.
there, beat up on these Norwegian guys.
The
And little do they
schedule
know
is
they're gonna
weird.
take it.
They don't even play for like 2 weeks. The schedule's weird, but
schedule is it's a weird schedule, for sure. Looking
yeah,
at it.
they don't play. Yeah, everybody doesn't play every week, and then you only play in 7 games. It's very
Yeah, I
interesting.
saw that.
But you know what? That's because Stockholm is playing in the CFL too.
Makes sense.
Mm.
I don't know if any of the other Swedish teams are playing in any internationals, but I know Stockholm is in the CEFL because they're playing the Manchester Titans on April 20th.
Yeah,
Y'all
Stockholm's gonna
might
win that.
catch y'all might catch me in Stockholm for that game. Who knows? Purvis
On the 20th.
travels. Yeah, on the 20th. I got it in my schedule thing. That's our picks. I think we did them. What I want to do next is actually do a consensus because we'll put something on the internet saying these are our like show picks. So I looked at where we picked everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
there's 2 spots that we can change if we want to. But here's the list so far. In eighth place, coming in last, we have AIK. Seventh place, Predators. Sixth place is Oslo, and fifth place is Limham. Now, those two, we don't really have a consensus. So we can kind of decide now if y'all want to who we want to put where. You want Oslo at 6, Limham at 5, or flip it?
Let's take it. Let's
Debate.
take a vote. I'm gonna put Oslo at least at 5. But if you guys believe that Limham is better than them, then we keep them at 6.
Mm.
I don't believe they're better than them.
Did Oslo win the Norwegian Championship last year?
I don't think they did, actually.
I think
Maybe
maybe
they did.
Idrol might have won it again. I'm not sure, but I'm not following the Norwegian league
Yeah,
as
I'm not
close as that.
100% sure. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
And that's my point right there, boys. That's why they stay right
Oh, that's it.
All
Oslo
right,
6,
there.
Limham
Oslo,
5.
Oslo
It,
6, Limham champions, huh?
yeah, because
Yeah.
out of all the new teams that are entering the Super Series, Limham is the only one who won the
All right,
championship.
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that. And then
Yeah,
4 is OBK,
yeah,
3 Karlstad, 2 Tirso, 1 Stockholm Mean Machines.
looks good to me.
All
Okay.
right. I actually like that like music with
Did
that. I might just use the music. It was pretty dope. So that's it for this episode of Pro Football Sweden. Fellas, any last words before we get out of here? Anything you want to say? You know, let people know what's on
Uh,
your mind before we get out of here.
just continue to listen to this platform, listen to this podcast. I know this is our first episode. We're looking forward to many more, giving you guys good content. But just yeah, just listen, share, and all my picks. Don't let me down. Don't let me down. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna talk trash about you if you let me down.
Don't let me down. What about you, Alpha?
When it comes to the picks, don't get super sensitive. It's a podcast, it's a platform. And we don't ultimately know what's going on between 2 to 5 and the bottom three. All of those are up for grabs. However, number one, we just ultimately feel confident with Stockholm Mean Machines. And make sure you guys tune in. Next week, we're going to be talking about imports. We're going to be talking about season play and much more fun topics as we dive into pregame and postgame, things like that. So we're going to have fun. This first episode is all predictions. Make sure you guys stick with us.
Good luck to all the teams this season. We're excited to be following you with football in Sweden. We'll be posting a few more episodes before the season begins, so we'll have more content for everybody to kind of follow and get a vibe of how we're doing the show. Please like, follow, and subscribe on all social channels at Pro Football Sweden, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, door.